faith, family, and the future of our community. Welcome to Ashonda at Large.
The years following the war were times of unrest and uncertainty. Slave owners in the Deep South sought to recover wartime losses by importing African slaves at an ever-increasing rate. There was no greater division in the nation than the one that lay between the states that had begun to abolish slavery and those that had not. In 1780, Pennsylvania lawmakers ruled that in keeping with the Revolution's principles of equality, they would extend their freedom to others. As a result, all black children born in Pennsylvania from that year forward were to be freed at age 28.
The problem with the libertarian ideology of the entire revolutionary and constitutional period is this notion that the pursuit of happiness is tied to property. So even though Thomas Jefferson is able to say all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with inalienable rights, these rights include the right of property. As strongly as people might adhere to the notion of liberty and freedom, they adhere just as strongly to the notion of property.
Slaveholders won an enormous political victory. Owning slaves would be part of the American freedom, and in the process, a union was forged.
At the edge of Central Park in Manhattan, there's a bronze statue of a doctor named James Marion Sims, whose brilliant achievement carried the fame of American surgery throughout the entire world. He's the guy who created the vaginal speculum, an instrument gynecologists use for examination. He pioneered the surgical repair for fistula, a complication from childbirth, and became known as the father of modern gynecology. But that brilliant achievement was the result of a series of excruciating experimental surgeries that he conducted on enslaved women.
As African Americans, we've been abused for so long, consistently by the system. Why should we trust it? Why should we go to one ill? And that's iatrophobia. That's a fear of the healer, inculcated by the behavior of those healers, unfortunately.
It starts with slavery. Doctors relied on slave owners for financial stability. They accompanied plantation masters to auctions to verify the fitness of slaves and were called in to treat sick slaves to protect their owners' investments. The 1830s also marked the beginning of recorded experimentation on black women's bodies. One doctor performed experimental C-sections on slaves. Another one perfected the dangerous ovariotomy, or removal of an ovary by testing the procedure on slave women. In fact, half the original articles in the 1836 Southern Medical and Surgical Journal dealt with experiments on black people.
For this week's Speak Out segment, we look at some billboard backlash. This billboard was recently put up in Dallas, Texas by a pro-abortion group, the Afia Center. It says, "Black women take care of their families by taking care of themselves. Abortion is self-care. Hashtag trust black women." Let's address the first lie off the bat. Abortion, the destruction of human life, is not self-care. But what's especially alarming is this billboard is blatantly targeting black women for abortion.
And of course, there was James Marion Sims, whose reputation is etched in history and on that statue in Central Park. Between 1845 and 1849, Sims began performing experimental surgeries on a 17-year-old slave named Anarcha. He eventually performed 30 operations on Anarcha and more surgeries on about 11 other female slaves. When his male colleagues could no longer bear to assist him in inflicting pain on the women, the slaves took turns restraining one another.
Some kids are unwanted, so you kill them now and kill them later. You bring them in the world unwanted, unloved, then send them to the electric chair. So you kill them now and kill them later.
Even though anesthesia was introduced in 1846, Sims chose not to use it for his experimentation with slaves. His practices echoed one of the most prevalent and dangerous beliefs in medicine at the time, that Black people did not feel pain or anxiety. This book from 1851, titled The Natural History of Human Species, claimed the American dark races bear with indifference tortures insupportable to a white man.
Well, what does it mean when you say that someone doesn't feel pain? Among other things, you're speaking about their humanity. These are all part of that suite of beliefs emanating from the 19th century that we still have not shaken off.
When a woman gets pregnant, that is not a human being.
After the Civil War ended, the 1900s brought a wave of immigrants to the U.S. It sparked a race panic and coincided with the birth of the American Eugenics movement. One of the movement's key objectives was to reduce the childbearing potential of the poor and disabled. Leaders included birth control pioneer and Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger, who eventually devised the controversial Negro Project, or family planning centers that pushed birth control in the Black South. It was a project that even garnered support from W.E.B. Du Bois, a founder of the NAACP.
W.E.B. Du Bois's The Souls of Black Folk. How does racism affect identity? W.E.B. Du Bois wrote The Souls of Black Folk in 1903. The book exposed the material causes of racism at the time and explained the effects that racism has on Black identity. Du Bois wanted to show his readers the strange meaning of being Black. He believed at the dawn of the 20th century that the laws and the society that had prevented Blacks from achieving equality in a post-slavery era would continue to pose a problem for Black identity. He argued that as a result of this, Blacks and whites in the United States were separated by a color line. Du Bois's book pioneered a related concept. He believed that the color line did more than deny Blacks fair access to jobs, education, and opportunity. It actually weighed so heavily on their souls that it prevented them from achieving their potential as human beings.
Now, I want the listeners to hold on to their seats again, because here's another quote by W.E.B. Du Bois. He suggested that Margaret, and let me say this, all of this can be found in the June 1932 edition of the Birth Control Review. Everything I'm saying, you can look there and it's there.
That's right.
So she suggested that, he suggested to her that she should approach Black churches because quote, they were open to intelligent propaganda of any sort.
It was a project that even garnered support from W.E.B. Du Bois, a founder of the NAACP, who wrote that Black people bred carelessly and disastrously.
African American babies were no longer economically valuable. And African Americans themselves had gone from being a resource to a nuisance.
In June of 1973, the SPLC uncovered 100 to 150,000 cases of women who had been sterilized with federal funds in Alabama. Half the women were Black. In recent decades, women of color continue to be exposed to dubious reproductive health programs.
When we talk about the issue of health right now in 2016, when we hear those chanting and talking about Black Lives Matter, and we say, well, the number one killer of Black male baby boys is the abortion clinics. And just this past Sunday, the President of the United States, Obama, and Hillary Clinton tweeted to Planned Parenthood to say congratulations on your past 100 years, and we now look forward into the next 100 years of Planned Parenthood. But Planned Parenthood total existence is for depopulation and the killing of Black children. And so while you hear those talking about Black Lives Matter and talking about those being killed by the police, there are over 1,800 abortions of Black babies. Majority of them are Black boys that take place every day inside of this country. That gets very little attention. So there's no Black Lives Matters protesting or show testing or hoe testing going on outside of any Planned Parent. That's from even the fake white liberals that run around and say, Black Lives Matters. So, I think we can't dismiss that fact when we're talking about, because we're talking about Black Lives Matters from, again, the womb to the tomb, from gestation to our ultimate manifestation. And I think that we can't dismiss that in terms of more Black babies are killed in the womb than killed by the police. More of us are being killed in the hospitals, in the suites, than being killed in the streets. More of us die from infections and injections as the popular book, of course, Murder by Injection, than dying, of course, in terms of out in the streets. And I think that we can't dismiss that.
The struggle for women's equality is not simply something to be read about in the pages of your history books. It continues to be the fight of our lifetime. Women's ability to get basic health care, our right to make the most deeply personal decisions, is facing the most significant threats in recent memory. This administration has rolled back access to reproductive health services at home and around the world, and proposed cuts to international health, development, and diplomacy that put both women's lives and our national security at risk. And even in places like New York, which is home to some of the leading healthcare institutions in the world, we are in the midst of an epidemic of maternal mortality, which disproportionately affects Black women.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be back in Houston with so many friends and to have an opportunity to participate in the Planned Parenthood annual meeting. I have to tell you that it was a great privilege when I was told that I would receive this award. I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. Her courage, her tenacity, her vision. Another of my great friends, Ellen Chesler, is here, who wrote a magnificent biography of Margaret Sanger called Woman of Valor. And when I think about what she did all those years ago in Brooklyn, taking on archetypes, taking on attitudes and accusations flowing from all directions, I am really in awe of her. And there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from her life and from the cause she launched and fought for and sacrificed so greatly.
What's something that you always carry with you?
Hot sauce.
I got hot sauce in my bag. Swag.
Hot sauce.
Are you getting information right now?
Hot sauce.
Hot sauce in my bag, Swag?
Hot sauce.
Really?
Yes.
Now listen, I just want you to know, people are going to see this and say, okay, she's pandering to Black people.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Now, this eugenic theory label Black women as sexually careless and bad mothers who gave birth to defective children. So as a result of their theory, Black women were forced in sterility. The woman you speak of, Margaret Sanger, she's the most famous eugenicist. She exploited the stereotypes of Blacks in order to reduce the fertility rate of us. She also recruited Black leaders to contribute articles in support of eugenics. Now, I'm going to read. Now, I want your listeners to, hold on to their seats because I know they learn about W.E.B. Du Bois every February for Black History Month. But this is a quote by W.E.B. Du Bois. The mass of ignorant Negroes still breed carelessly and disastrously, so that the increase among Negroes even more than the increase among whites, is from that portion of the population least intelligent and fit and least able to rear their children properly. That is a quote from W.E.B. Du Bois in support of eugenics and Margaret Sanger. Charles Johnson, who was the first black president of Fisk University, wrote that eugenic discrimination was necessary for blacks.
So you kill them now and kill them later. You drag them in the world unwanted, unloved, then you send them to the electric chair. So you kill them now and kill them later.
Planned Parenthood objective has not changed. I mean, it's still the same. As the brother said, the number one killer of black babies is abortion. That's through and also, if people would take a notice when they're driving down the street, you would see Planned Parenthood in poor black communities. You won't see a grocery store. You won't even see a good medical center, but you will see Planned Parenthood.
The nation's most restrictive abortion bill is now law. The legislation would punish doctors who perform abortions with life in prison, but it does not provide an exception for victims of rape or incest. Our next guest, Sam Blakely, had an abortion after she was raped 2 years ago. Last week, she testified before Alabama's legislature, begging them not to sign this bill.
If abortion was not legal, I would still have one somewhere, somehow, or I just would not be here because there's no way that I would be able to carry my rapist child. There's no way. And I want you all to know that as you are deciding on this. Please, I'm begging you, please don't take away my choice.
Here is what the Republicans on the state legislature say they were hoping for in passing this bill. Let me play for you their motivation.
Human life has rights.
We'll never get a heartbeat bill to be constitutional until Roe versus Wade is decided and reversed.
So that is an admission that this is designed to go to the Supreme Court, that they are hoping that the Supreme Court takes this up. In fact, they've made it possibly so extreme so the Supreme Court is forced to take this up because what they want, I guess, is a heartbeat bill or something to that effect. So what do you think of their motivations here?
I think it is sick and I think it's cruel that they are willing to endanger the lives of literally millions of women for some sort of political pat on the back or something, some sort of political advancement in their agendas or something. I'm not sure if they understand the gravity of what's going to happen, but at this point, I have no words. I have absolutely no words to describe the disgust that I feel and so many women have told me that they feel. They're scared. They're angry. We don't know what's going to happen. We are seriously in fear for our lives.
Are you to tell me what to do with my body? It's my decision. It's not yours. And how dare you tell me it is?
When a woman gets pregnant, that is not a human being.
Reversing Roe isn't the scary boogeyman that the other side tries to claim. We believe that there is willingness on the Supreme Court to actually hear Roe versus Wade and hear out whether or not the decision of abortion should be returned back to the state.
So, I mean, through the third trimester. The third trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks.
Okay, but to the end of the third trimester.
Yep, I don't think we have the limit in the bill.
So, where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth, she has physical signs of that she is about to give a birth. Would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
Mr. Chairman, that would be a decision that the doctor, the physician, and the woman would
I understand
make
that. I'm asking
point.
if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really blown out of proportion. But again, we want the government not to be involved in these types of decisions. We want the decision to be made by the mothers and their providers. And this is why, Julie, that legislators, most of whom are men, by the way, shouldn't be telling a woman what she should and shouldn't be doing with her body.
When a woman gets pregnant, that is not a human being inside of her. It's part of her body.
Second trimester D&E abortions performed between roughly 14 and 24 weeks of gestation. Your patient today is 17 years old. She's 22 weeks pregnant. Her baby is the length of your hand plus a couple of inches. And she's been feeling her baby kick for the last several weeks. But she's asleep on an operating room table. You walk into that operating room scrubbed and gowned, and after removing laminaria, you introduce a suction catheter into the uterus. This is a 14 French suction catheter. If she were 12 weeks pregnant or less, basically the width of your hand or smaller, you could basically do the entire procedure with this. But babies this big don't fit through catheters this size. After suctioning the amniotic fluid out from around the baby, you introduce an instrument called a Sofer clamp. It's about 13 inches long. It's made of stainless steel. The business end of this clamp is about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide. There are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. A D&E procedure is a blind abortion, so picture yourself introducing this and grabbing anything you can blindly and pull, and I do mean hard, and out pops a leg about that big, which you put down on the table next to you. Reach in again, pull out an arm about the same length, which you put down on the table next to you. And use this instrument again and again to tear out the spine, the intestines, the heart and lungs. Head on the baby that size is about the size of a large plum. Can't see it, but you've a pretty good idea you've got it if you've got your instrument around something and your fingers are spread about as far as they go. You know you did it right if you crush down on the instrument and white material runs out of the cervix. That was the baby's brains. Then you could pull out skull pieces. And you have a day like I had a lot of times, sometimes a little face comes back and stares back at you. Congratulations, you just successfully performed a second trimester D&E abortion. You just affirmed her right to choose.
Do you want to have this baby? And my mother said yes. And she said, God is going to give you the strength to have this baby. So my mother, she walked back into the waiting room. The doctor called her name. The doctor hadn't even cleaned up the blood from the last abortion. And she said, I'm leaving. And he said, no, you've already paid for this. And she said, I've changed my mind. And he said, no, you're just nervous. And he yelled at her and he said, don't leave this room. But my mother was, I believe, empowered by God. God gave her the strength. And she said no. And she walked out of that hospital room. And she walked down the stairs. And she saved my life. Thank you, Jesus. And I've prayed for many years. I moved in 2005. I moved to D.C. and I prayed for many years in front of the Supreme Court for the ending of abortion. And what I want you guys to know is that this is a divine moment in history, that God has heard our prayers and he has brought us justice, and we are going to see abortion abolished. And I just want to say that God is raising up voices in the African American community to expose the truth that Planned Parenthood is an organization that was founded by racist eugenics to destroy the African American community. And it will end. The slaughter of our black brothers and sisters in the womb will end. But we must be the voices, no matter what society says, no matter what the media says. Abortion is the #1 cause of death in the African American community. And God is raising up abolitionists, just like in the times of slavery. He's raising up activists, just like in the times of the civil rights movement, to bring this thing to an end and to turn our nation back to him and to end the bloodshed. So I thank you guys for being a voice for life. Never quit, never stop. It's a civil rights issue.